Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're looking at a massive, hot-off-the-press legal judgment delivered on May 27, 2026 by the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, or ITLOS. Now, this isn't some dusty, boring dispute over fishing quotas. We are talking about a landmark, multi-million-dollar showdown over the absolute vital arteries of the global economy. It's a case that forces anyone who relies on international trade, which, let's be honest, is all of us, to confront exactly what happens when a coastal state uses the guise of maritime security to hold a giant commercial vessel and its civilian crew hostage. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this massive commercial oil tanker, basically a horizontal skyscraper, just quietly drifting. Out of nowhere, an Equatorial Guinean warship pulls up, aiming heavy military-grade weapons directly at the commercial hull, and broadcasts three terrifying words right over the radio. Orders to shoot. On the deck of that Marshall Islands flagged vessel, 26 unarmed civilian crew members were just standing there with their hands raised, completely surrendering to military force. That moment kicked off a truly harrowing psychological ordeal for those seafarers. Section 1, Hostage on the High Seas, a breakdown of global law. We tend to assume that the global conveyor belt of trade just operates under these rigid, predictable laws. But this case completely shatters that comfortable illusion. To understand why, we have to look at the legal geography of the interception on August 12, 2022. The heroic Idun was in the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ, of São Tomé and Príncipe. Think of an EEZ using a front yard and sidewalk analogy. A country's EEZ is like their front yard. They have exclusive rights to the resources there, like fishing or drilling for oil. But the waters themselves, those are like the sidewalk. Foreign ships still maintain absolute freedom of navigation to just pass through. The commercial vessel was legally hanging out on the sidewalk of São Tomé and Príncipe, yet an Equatorial Guinean warship intercepted them anyway. And the justification for this interception just adds a whole other layer of absurdity to the situation. Equatorial Guinea wasn't even acting on its own grievance. They were acting on an alert from a third country entirely, Nigeria, who suspected the ship of a regulatory violation regarding some crude oil loading paperwork. If we map this onto everyday life, it's literally like a mall cop in Pennsylvania suspecting you of shoplifting, so they call a SWAT team in Indiana, who then crosses state lines into Ohio to pull you over with assault rifles. It completely ignores every single jurisdictional boundary that exists. Section 2, the timeline of detention, 92 days under armed guard. We really need to shift focus to the devastating human fallout the SWAT team approach had on the innocent people caught in the crossfire. Following that August 12th interception, those 26 civilian seafarers lived an absolute nightmare. They suffered a 92-day military detention in Equatorial Guinea. That's 3 entire months under armed guard on their own ship. And to make matters worse, even after the shipowners paid a €2 million fine, essentially a ransom, the crew still wasn't freed. On November 11, Equatorial Guinea transferred them directly into Nigerian custody, where they were locked up for another 6 agonizing months until May 27, 2023. The tribunal ultimately declared this entire grueling sequence a continuing wrongful international act. Section 3, ITLOS and the piracy pretext, ITLOS versus regional codes. Now, what's really interesting about this is how Equatorial Guinea actually tried to defend their actions, because you can't just go rogue on the open water and shrug it off. They attempted a highly controversial defense, claiming they were suppressing piracy under the regional Yaoundé Code. But here is the absolute crux of the legal battle. The global constitution for the oceans is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. And under UNCLOS Article 101, the definition of piracy is incredibly strict. It fundamentally requires illegal acts of physical violence committed by a private ship for private ends. The crew of the heroic Idun didn't attack anyone. A regulatory dispute about oil permits is not piracy. So, naturally, the tribunal completely dismantled the piracy defense. They pointed out the sheer absurdity of Equatorial Guinea waiting roughly 60 hours between receiving Nigeria's alerts and intercepting the ship, yet doing absolutely zero basic due diligence or investigation during that time. The ruling cemented the bedrock rule here. Mere suspicion of a regulatory crime does not justify a military raid, and absolutely no regional security code can ever trump the global UNCLOS framework. Section 4, the ghost in the courtroom, Nigeria's missing role. But despite Equatorial Guinea sitting squarely in the hot seat, there was this massive, unavoidable ghost haunting the trial. Nigeria. Nigeria initiated the suspicion. They ultimately took custody of the crew for 6 months, yet they were completely absent from the courtroom. Equatorial Guinea actually made a cynical, but honestly kind of brilliant legal maneuver to try and get the case thrown out because of this. They invoked something called the monetary gold principle. Basically, they argued, hey, we were just acting as a proxy for Nigeria. Since Nigeria didn't consent to be here, you can't judge them. And because you can't judge them, you can't judge us. It's a rule designed to protect sovereign states, but here they were using it to try and immunize a whole chain of misconduct from any judicial scrutiny. Well, the tribunal rejected that defense in a 4-1 vote, deciding that, look, if you hold the gun, you face the court, regardless of who whispered in your ear. However, we really have to acknowledge the lone dissenting voice of Judge Ad Hoc Couvreur, who provided a vital reality check. By strictly punishing Equatorial Guinea while just severing Nigeria from the facts, the court was judging a totally incomplete picture of what happened. Acknowledging this dissent keeps the law honest. It shows that international justice is a messy web, and ignoring the state that sparked the fire leaves a pretty big blind spot in how maritime security actually functions in the real world. Section 5. The $13 million bill. The sting of accountability. So the crucial point is how this all shook out financially. Moving from the philosophical courtroom debate, the tribunal brought down a massive $13 million hammer. First, they ordered a total refund of that €2 million fine. Then came $5.9 million for loss of hire. A very large crude carrier is a floating business that's vital to global commerce. Sidelining it for 92 days completely disrupts supply chains and cascades into breached contracts. This commercially crippling cost was forced entirely onto the offending state, not the commercial insurers, which sends an absolute shockwave through maritime economics. But honestly, the most legally groundbreaking detail is this $1,750 figure. The tribunal awarded over $4 million explicitly for non-material damage, which breaks down to $1,750 per day per person for the 26 crew members. Instead of treating ships merely as abstract economic units on a spreadsheet, the tribunal officially put a price tag on human welfare. They declared that the profound psychological trauma of military captivity carries a massive, undeniable cost. Section 6. Protecting global trade. Defending maritime order. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why this matters to you, because this ruling directly protects the stability of the global network that delivers the goods and energy you rely on every single day. It cements an absolute legal standard against coastal states using fake piracy claims to close shipping lanes on a whim. It significantly de-risks volatile regions for the global energy trade, assuring the market that offending states, not the shipowner, not the commercial insurers, and ultimately not you, the consumer, will bear the crushing financial burdens of these unlawful seizures. So the system worked today. The tribunal proved that the law of the sea actually has teeth, securing a massive victory for those 26 vulnerable seafarers and for the global economy. But I want to leave you with a really provocative question to mull over. If a developing nation faces a stinging $13 million penalty today, what happens tomorrow if a global superpower with a multi-trillion-dollar economy decides to break these exact same rules? If a massive military views a multi-million-dollar penalty as just an acceptable cost of doing business to control a strategic shipping lane, does the law of the sea truly protect us, or does it merely price the cost of breaking it? Definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining this explainer, and keep questioning the systems that connect our world.